welcome to the Modern Job Hunt. Today's episode, we're going to be covering how to use AI to maximize your job search. I'm the host, Ryan Federley, and with me is Salil. We'll be talking about AI in the job hunt. So, AI is everywhere these days. I'm testing out some AI applications in my own job hunt. This whole series is a concept I developed after getting laid off to kind of help other job hunters in the process. So I'm doing one season, 10 episodes, just covering interesting ways of looking for a job in the modern tech sector through live streams. And this content is going to be shared after. So if you're watching us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, feel free to comment, leave some questions, and we'll be able to see them and reply. And this will be available on YouTube after. So with that, I'll introduce Salil. So Salil, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in AI?
Absolutely. So originally started off as an entrepreneur and then got into the product field. My foray were into generative AI, or rather AI, was through conversational AI. So I started building chatbots. Was trying to build CCAI, so that's contact center AI, and we were using essentially traditional computational linguistics technologies like named entity recognition and other things, which then got completely accelerated because of this boom in LLMs, which is essentially generative AI, and it has been a game changer for a lot of activities on a consumer level where you could only do so much with the traditional AI technologies. So, regardless, I've been working as a consultant in generative and conversational AI strategy for a bit now, and yeah, that's my perspective into AI. So, I just bring my AI perspective into trying to understand how we can use these and leverage these technologies to accelerate the job hunt, and not just the job hunt, but find other ways in which it can unlock potential and productivity for you as a human being.
All right. And so, as I'm a product person, you're a product person, I'm taking a product based approach to this show. So, for those of you that have watched prior episodes, in the first episode, that was my first ever live stream. So, I didn't even know if it was recording. So, that was a success. It did record, it's now on YouTube. It was my first ever LinkedIn Live and first ever time I uploaded a YouTube video. So, I'm quite new to the whole video content space. First time using tools like Restream. So big MVP success. This is the first time I'll be streaming to YouTube directly, Facebook directly, Twitter directly. I've scheduled it in advance with multiple platforms. So hopefully someone in the audience is found this through another platform. First time I did some marketing with my guest, Salil. We've been kind of sharing it through our own networks. And we're also working together far in advance to plan some of the topics for today's episode. So we should see some big episode over episode improvements on this one. And to kick us off, the first question, which is the first time I've got questions in advance of an episode, came from a friend of mine named Al. And what he asked me was, does AI make it easier to be in the job hunt right now? And my response to him was, it kind of depends. AI is like a tool. It's like PowerPoint, really. And so, from in my experience, yes, it does make it easier to using tools like Teal or Simplify that autofill applications with a bunch of basic stuff like your first name, your last name, and so that makes it super fast to fill out a lever application or a greenhouse application. But it also makes it super easy for everyone else to fill out those applications that using the same type of speed tools. And so what it does is it just floods more applications into these things, which puts more emphasis on the company using AI because there's more. So it's a real cat and mouse game. So I thought I'd throw it over to Solo and kind of get your opinion on, does AI make this whole thing a little easier or not?
No, I think you have captured the essence of the problem. Essentially, it is a cyclical problem where these tools might even have similar outputs for certain things. So we might get similar sounding applications. And that is where we should consider these technologies as a starting point. And like you correctly assessed, it is a tool. It's a hammer. You can build a house with it or go destroy things with it. So uh, I mean, of course, there's a caveat. Depends on who you are as a human being. For people like you and I think it unlocks our productivity, and it gets me specifically for out of the empty page syndrome, right? Like, where do I start if I'm trying to make a cogent argument? So I think it helps with that. And in terms of the speed, it definitely accelerates the amount of applications that one is able to do, but it also causes the companies to then pivot and use AI in their uh, uh, in their recruiting processes, so that they are able to manage the volume of people that come in. So I would say use it, because that is going to definitely increase the amount of output that you're able to do. So at the end of the day, job hunt is pretty much just making applications and seeing, who is looking for the talent that you have, the specific set of skills that you are bringing to the table. And it's not personal when people don't really respond, and I know how defeating and tough that feels. But I think the AI tools help you. Again, depends on who you are as a human being, but for me, I think they would help in the context that they make it easier to go through that volume and not bring that cognitive load of, oh, I've applied to 50 roles and I haven't heard a peep. That can be tough. But if you're applying to 500 roles, and you're able to apply to 500 roles with the use of AI now, whether that is causing you more concern than not is a subjective matter.
I think one of the things that we'll discuss throughout the episode is kind of how there's still a big human element to job hunting, and so like I know that referral links are more important than ever from people inside these companies. Does it mean you don't have to be really good at these AI tools and everything like that? No, because I think when you get through the interview process, you will still want to be able to know all these tools to accelerate your ability to perform in the roles. And I think every role in tech now is going to incorporate some elements of AI. And so it's not like you can get in the door without knowing a lot of stuff about AI. It's just that like there is a huge blend of like your relationships, your network, and whatnot, being required, because if everyone knows the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, what is your core advantage? And so I think that there is a blend that, and one of the things that I find, AI is not me. AI sends a neutral or a medium message. And so when I'm applying to a role, and that's why I've noticed a high increase in qualitative questions in applications. And I don't know about yourself, but I believe this is to get away from pre-scripted AI messaging, because it's like, why do you want the role? What interests you about this role? And I know we're going away from even cover letters lately. And so those small little box qualitative questions are something that AIs can't answer perfectly, because they don't understand who I am. They don't understand my background. And we're getting better at feeding CVs into AI and things like that. But really, like, the human motivation factors are something that, like, of course you can run your stuff through Grammarly and other AIs that will make your writing sound better, but like really the motivation part is something that like AI cannot do today to the degree that humans can write in that form.
Yeah, and just to riff off of what you were saying, so I agree with the fact that, like, AI is not your USP, right? AI is the thing that is accentuating. It's like having reading glasses if you have, like, challenges with reading. Because again, humans are not cognitively able to do so much writing in a day. What the AI might do is essentially help you in the process of going through this onerous task. Ideally, what sets you apart from anybody else is the skills that you've developed as you are using these tools. Because these tools, again, AI will not replace you, but people who know AI might. So getting up to date on these tools is just good practice, right? Like, for example, I am not an iPhone user. I've been like an Android user for like over a decade now. So when I like pick up my partner's iPhone to try and do something, I'm just confused. It's the challenge is you're not used to that. There's a friction there because you haven't used it before. So get used to, like, taste the thing just to get an idea of what this feels like. What are the tools? What are the capacities of these tools? And you might find that they help you. You might find that they don't really, they're very generic, but make sure that that is not your USP. Your USP is your network, the relationship that you cultivated, the skills that you have built over time, and how you're able to then leverage those, because you're going to be working in teams. You're not going to be working with AI essentially, so the AI will help you work better in teams, but it is not going to change how you are able to get there. So finding a job, I would say, is a tough task. One of the things that you mentioned is, it might not find, like, understand who you are, but there are like techniques that have come into play where you are able to, like, for example, with if you're using a chat gpt plus user, you're able to give it a custom message. So you give it a persona, you give it a system message, which is like, hey, this is who you are. You, for this particular case, we can be like, hey, you are an expert HR recruiter and like career coach. You're going to be helping the candidates who come to you. And then, like, in the custom instructions, we can add in like, hey, this is who Ryan is, and this is like, we obviously, you give a little bit about your profile, you highlight the skills that you have. So you can even pass in your resume as like a part, like through code interpreter, to get that bit fit in. And then once it's in the language model's memory, it can then create certain snippets of text that sound like you, because you've given it enough in your own voice to then leverage your own voice to shape it again. And you tell it, right, like, I want you to emulate the voice and tone in the following text, and then it will essentially like follow that. So ideally, that's the way to then try and leverage these technologies to, again, find your own tone and voice, and make sure that you're answering these evaluative questions with who you are, rather than just generic AI.
Yeah, and I think that there is a range of AI, and what you're mentioning there around, the latest of ChatGPT plus and one is the far edge of the median kind of user base in the middle of the bell curve. Obviously, there are experts on one end, but I think that what hopefully a few people will get out of this episode is there's stuff that's very, very easy to grasp that you can get out of this episode today. And the one about like autofilling applications that we've mentioned earlier with like Tio and Simplify, that's something that it's almost like you're filling out a form and you're putting a Chrome extension in, and then you just click it when you get onto an application, and it fills it out. And whether that's robotic process automation or AI, like that's debatable, but it's filling the application out faster for you, and that's a form of AI. I think what people often think is you have to get deep into this tone of voice stuff and that kind of stuff in AI, and it's like really like AI can be a calculator. When you have a calculator and a list of 20 math problems, you'll get through them faster with that calculator. And I find that, like, yes, my creativity is also increased with AI, which I think that, people that are getting into it are also finding that that's the case. And people that aren't, just start with something, and then you'll eventually just walk the path up and get into more and more different use cases, and you'll realize that it just makes you a little bit better. And that's going back to the earlier conversation where relationships network is important to get your foot in the door. But really, like, if you don't know kind of a few of these new factors, you're going to have a hard time competing with the guy that's doing a case study using 7 different AI tools, and in the later stage of an interview process.
Absolutely. And I would love to, hear your thoughts about what one can do as, like, let's say, a new immigrant. You don't have the networks. What might be tips that you might have for that audience who is like, okay, what can I do to build those connections?
I think that like communities are incredibly relevant in the job hunt, and that is like non AI stuff, and it's developing. Like I know we've met in person before and connected multiple times, and use that is AI can accelerate the stuff that is like deep thinking and whatnot, and it can leave time for those human engagements. And so I think that for someone coming in, there are tools that will look at your LinkedIn and say, does your LinkedIn profile appear like 100% complete or a professional profile? Do you have all the skills? Do you have the right image at the top? Do you have the right tag at the top? And sometimes I actually find that AI does the wrong thing that I don't want to present, and so I skip the recommendation and I don't go forward with it. So I think that like finding communities, if I typed in through Google, find me a product community in Calgary and blah 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 blah. Like Google
Which city you're in?
still you still need to have a certain amount of Boolean operators and other things like that. It's not as natural. Whereas I find like programs like ChatGPT and whatnot, they accept natural speech a lot better
Mhm.
than kind of native Google. And so the long form keywords or searches are really good. So for those immigrants to find the humans, like to find the events, to find the communities, all that stuff is like not easy to do. There's some on meetups, there's some through organizations over here. So
Mhm.
like find the humans, and if they're already good with the AI, then that's like putting two pieces of the puzzle kind of together.
No, I think you've built a splendid network yourself, which is why I thought it would be valuable for the audience to listen to your insights on how to go about building that network. Uh, with this, I think it's a good segue to just run through. Again, I was just thinking about like the different phases of the job process or the job application process, and then breaking down some of the tools. Would you like to start with the demo first and then jump into these phases, or should I go through the phases first?
Yeah, and just to top up one last thing on the
Sure,
networking
please.
before we go through the phases, and then you can do a demo. Writing your first cold intro to someone can be daunting if this is not something that you do. And that is where AI can come in splendidly. And like, yes, you can go and try to find templates here and there, but like if you just go into ChatGPT and say, write me a LinkedIn intro for someone in the product management space, it will punch out like a little bit. And you can actually say, I want it shorter, I want it shorter, I want it shorter, I want it under 300 characters and that kind of stuff. And it'll put something together. If you're not someone that does that naturally, ChatGPT is like ripping off the band-aid. So with that said, I'll pass it to you for kind of a demo, and then we can kind of keep rolling. And for anyone in the audience, kind of feel free to ask questions. We do have the chat available, and so we can kind of respond as we go throughout. But yeah, I'll pass the floor to you, Sale.
Thank you. So again, as I see the job hunting process, there are like a few things you go about doing in the process of that. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll go through this together. Uh, okay. Alrighty. So are you able to see my screen?
Oh yeah, we can see it now.
Sweet. So, as I see it, I've outlined some of the steps that one goes through. So, shortlisting jobs and the roles that one is interested in. So, there are platforms like Talent Prize and Pajama Jobs where you can essentially, like, they offer quizzes which narrow in on the types of companies with the culture that you are interested in. I'm just gonna open like a few of the links just so people can get an idea of what these places are. But ideally, there are tons of job listings. To find the ones that you are interested in would be another challenge that can be solved using AI. So platforms like Talent Price, Pajama Jobs, and Forte offer that with, in addition to that, I'm just going to show you folks ChatGPT's plugins, where you are able to use these plugins to essentially um, okay, so first thing is ChatGPT, and you don't need like paid ChatGPT, but if you have access to plugins, you're then able to access the plugin store, within which there are tons of job finding or job application tools that can help you level up. So I would suggest that people go through some of these things, find out which ones are helpful for their process. So like this will redesign your resume or CV, optimize for automated systems. Same for looking for jobs, right? Like, so you can look at this thing. It helps you find your, it helps you along your job search, whether it is, whether you're looking for contract jobs or something else. And I am just going to move on to like the next thing. So like the next steps would be research if an application tracking system is being used. So if so, audit the resume to ensure readability and parsability. So the tools that can do that are again these ChatGPT plugins that can be used, or if not, you can use options like JobScan, which again offers you a few free, few free credits to essentially test your resume against ATS systems, as well as SkillSync, which again does the same. So there's another option which helps you. Again, these have multiple things. So you have like a resume builder, you have a resume scanner. You can find emails for the people or the companies, the recruiters that you're trying to reach out to. A resume bullet analyzer. So within your resumes, you ideally have things that you're describing that you've done, and impacts that you brought to that role or that organization in that role. Cover letter builders, as well as LinkedIn headline analyzers. They have multiple tools you can check out. I would suggest trying to figure out where are the where are along this journey of like applying for jobs, what are the phases in which you are having challenges, right? Is it like shortlisting of the jobs? Is that your challenge? Or if you already got that covered and you are just trying to figure out, okay, I have my resume, I have my shortlisted set of roles, but my profiles are not up to date, right? So you can then try and figure out career flow is like one of the things that I found is very interesting in terms of how it is able to get you to uh, optimize your LinkedIn profiles, as well as Teal that Ryan's already mentioned. It's an application tracker which helps you find better uh, uh, which essentially helps you track which jobs you apply to, and uh, where in the job application process you are. Uh,
Yeah, if I can
so,
butt in for a
yeah,
sec,
please.
Salil, just an interesting use case on the resume match and job scan and some of the others there and the bullet analyzer that I've come across is how all of these things kind of fit together.
Mhm.
And so when you look at the bullet piece, if someone's like, hey, how am I going to have a resume that matches and perfect bullets and everything like that. And my personal strategy is what I call the Lego blocks file. And like when you're building Lego, you can build a ship, you can build a skyscraper, all that kind of with the same pieces. And except you have a whole bunch in your drawer that you're swapping in and out. And so that's what the approach that I'm planning on taking in my next phase of my job hunt is building a whole bunch of bullets that apply to different roles and then keeping them in this master file, and then using things like JobScan and kind of the Resi Match to then scan against those kind of different job descriptions and getting the match as high as I can without doing a whole bunch of work. Because for those of you that haven't done it, like to get a resume bullet like well defined, it takes like a lot of work for every single bullet. And so if you want to go through an entire 2-page CV, it can take hours. But like, to do that for every single job can be actually soul crushing. So to have this kind of side document where you keep all these bullets that you've already refined, and then you can swap them in and out, or swap them in and swap a word around, because a lot of these resume matching tools, they're really down to keywords. You can swap a bullet in, swap a word, all that kind of stuff, reconfigure it really fast. Unfortunately, like that's about as fast as you can go. I haven't gone to the nth degree and said, okay, take this job description and pull from this master file and make a CV out of it. Like I think that's where we're probably going to get eventually. But yeah, that's kind of some of the advice that I've given to people is like creating at first a couple different CVs, like maybe 5 that apply to product management, product marketing, product strategy. Make 5 different ones and then have this master sheet of bullets, and then you can swap them in and out so that they align best for a fintech role or an ed tech role or whatever you apply to. And because in all of your jobs you've probably ever done, you've done, a handful of different things. And so you can have that diversity of bullets in the background ready to go. So I just wanted to kind of give a kind of how to use these things in action kind of little top up.
I think this is brilliant, and I'm going to, do a demo just based off of this. So, do you have that file perhaps, or is it something you're working on?
Yeah, I have a master file, and usually I have 3 on my CV at the time per role, 3 bullets, and then I have like 5 to 10 sometimes, like for more recent roles. And why I do this is because after 12 months, I never remember any metrics. I never remember any adjectives. And so what I try to do is when I finish a role is make like 10 bullets that I can kind of build on 2 or 3 years out. And those will be used to match keywords, match whatever. Like you can match keywords well, even if it's a role 10 years out, because the CV is like scanning the whole thing. So it can help you kind of like project yourself forward. And yeah, so I do have a file like that. I've only started really figuring this stuff out with time, and that's why I'm kind of trying to share my knowledge with other people.
No, that totally makes sense. I was wondering if I can get that file and I can run a demo based on that using ChatGPT.
Yeah, I will share that with you right now.
Awesome.
And for those of you that are wondering, I think one nail that you hit on the head there while I'm sending you the file, Salil, is where do I apply? What do I apply to? I think that's something like there's more options than ever. And I think that's a big challenge, especially with remote work.
100%. So yeah, what I'm thinking essentially is effectively using the master list that you've given and dropping it into ChatGPT's core interpreter, giving it a job description, and then asking it to essentially give me bullet points based on the things that you have written for that particular uh, job description. So again, I think this will give people enough insights as to how to like use some of the prompting techniques, because ideally you are able to give it certain examples that define who you are and how you are going about it. So for example, I'm just going to share my screen, and while you share the file. um,
So just shared the file,
Awesome.
and just opening up your screen there. And yeah, so that's why later in the season, my goal is to have someone in that's like a life coach, because I think one of the things that's hard about job hunting is actually defining where you want to go. So you can see there, this file is like 9 pages long. So it is a very extensive file that I use to kind of pull into 2 pages. So I think that that is the one way I kind of remember how I have done things in the past. And so I think one of the things that we're going into here is that real upper funnel piece. So let's see, is Salil still with us? I don't know. So the upper funnel, finding the jobs, LinkedIn, there's sites like OTA, others that allow you to find those jobs. And then what we're getting into now is really like crafting the initial application using tools like Teal, Simplify. All right, so Salil just let me know he'll be back in a second. I'll go into some of those tools that are part of the upper funnel that I personally have been using. So the LinkedIn profile scanning piece that I mentioned earlier, that was the careerflow.ai that Salil mentioned as part of his piece. One of the things that I find is that like you apply to so many roles through things like Simplify and Teal, your tracker will actually get huge. So I prefer to only really track things where I clear the initial interview screen. So if I've done an interview or had an assignment, then I try to track that. Otherwise, there's just too many applications out there or referrals. I always track referrals because then I know if I can get back to that person that helped me out. And then the people that I do actually get help from throughout my job hunt, I track who they are so that I can try to remember to thank them later and let them know where I landed. So that's kind of just more of a relationship development piece and doesn't really use AI. But yeah, and there's another tool that I've just started using recently. So there's a tool called Visual Ping. Visual Ping basically scans for visual changes in a website. So if I'm using a careers page as an example, let's say there's a company in Victoria called Red Brick. If I go down their careers page to the exact section that they would post the jobs, I can basically use Visual Ping to notify me when something changes in that jobs section. So we've got Salil back. So once you get your screen up and running, then I'll enable the sharing on that. And then
Thank
you can
you.
go into the demo. Yeah, so we were just chatting about Visual Ping. I was explaining how that works, how you can use it to kind of, they actually have a job hunter setting. You can track 5 sites. So it does limit you to the 5 for free that you want to track. But it's another way of kind of being faster than any, because the problem is when they hit an aggregation site like LinkedIn, they're getting swamped with applications. So ideally you can get in there right from the start when the job goes live. So, all right, you good to go, Solo?
Yes, sir, and thank you. I apologize for dropping off. It seems my my computer blue screen already. Alrighty. So what I did is I saved this as a TXT file, and I'm just going to drop that into ChatGPT's code interpreter. So, for example, if I was up, so I just wrote this out, like, let's say you're applying for Coursera's, like, you're currently looking for a financial aid for Coursera. What you would tell ChatGPT is like, who are you and what is your goal? So, like, you're essentially saying you're X, you are, like, you're this, you're going to do this course, and then based on certain things, based on certain parameters, please come up with like generate certain things that I'm telling you about. Also, I am giving it instructions about like the tone and the voice that I would like to have. So now let's just go with like a new thing. That was just like a prompt template, just to give you folks an idea of what it is that one essentially does when trying to use prompt engineering for getting the best type of results from these large language models. Alrighty, I'm just gonna check CV Lego Builder, CV Lego Blocks. Right. So what we're essentially doing is using the data analyzer plugin that GPT has, so advanced data analysis. We've dropped in this document, and now let's try and find a job that Ryan's interested in. Ryan, is there a job that you have been interested in lately? Maybe you can drop like a
Yeah,
link.
I mean, we could do anything product management pops
Okay,
up.
let's
And yeah,
yeah.
see.
Let's see. Product manager. Uh, right. So product manager intelligence. Let's see this. So I'm just gonna copy this.
And while Salil's doing that, just the prompts that he sees there, if anyone's heard anything about AI, you've probably heard about prompt engineering, and that's basically using specific functions to make the AI respond in a way that you want. It's kind of like when you want to put up a shelf on your wall, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, you're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and a few other things. And that's kind of what prompt-based engineering is. You're kind of using little tiny different things to get the function or the output the way you want it. And so that's why, like, I personally have been using Midjourney for a bit. For anyone that saw it, the thumbnail for this episode that was built on Midjourney using different prompts, and I mean, if you like technology, prompts are kind of actually just fun to play around with to see what the output is. So yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Solo.
Thank you. So ideally, what we're trying to do is get, like tell the system what we want it to do. So right now, what I'm going to say is, oops, okay. Uh, so use the file in, use the uploaded file. Uh, Read the uploaded file. So again, there's nuances in how you're trying to tell it what you want it to do. So read the uploaded file uh, to and build out a resume that uh, that fits the job description below. And there's something called delimiters. Okay, so essentially what delimiters are is just things that tell the language model that, hey, I want you to uh, pay attention to this particular part, and this, you're identifying things for it. So again, you can use whatever symbols you like. Ideally, you're using symbols that are not very usually used. So I will use equals, and then I will type, job description begins. I will complete that, and or you don't even need to say begins. You can just use like what developers use, because again, large language models also understand code. You can oops, zero. You can also just put like a slash before. This essentially notifies that that thing is done. So this is where that thing opened, and oops, don't know what happened here. I am going to turn off one of these.
And I think what we were also talking about earlier, so the chat GPT function applies to multiple parts of the job application process. So what we're getting into now is really resume experience job description fit, which will get you in the door. But what I have found extremely useful in my applications in the past couple weeks is case studies and interview prep, which is, you've given a case for a job and you want to respond in a way around a go-to-market strategy or something like that, and you're like, okay, I find I like to brainstorm first, and then I feed the language model the prompts. And then what that does is it often comes back with things that I'm like, either I would do or wouldn't do. I always frame it in a way that it's like, I would actually execute it this way. But sometimes there's another 20% out of the language model that I'm like, oh, I would do that, but I didn't think of it right away. So then I feed it into my response, and then it comes up with like a better, and then sometimes it presents things I wouldn't do because it's just my experience. So I'm like, maybe another PM would do that, but I wouldn't do that. So I remove that. And so I think that's the beauty of AI, is that like, depending on who you are, you won't behave the same way, and you won't follow the same rules. And that's why there's jobs for humans still, because we will all behave in unique different ways. But yeah, so what you're showing us is kind of the job description piece, and resume alignment, and I think there are so many different, and we haven't even got into, like, there's new tools out there right now that are around interview practice. Like, there's so many different things out there that are helping you down the funnel. Like, once you get through the first round, how to prepare for the first interview, how to do the case, how to, like, I mean, yeah, there's it's incredible what's the innovation in this space right now.
Absolutely, and like you outlined, essentially, as you go down the funnel, you go through the multiple steps that are involved in the job application process, whether that's like shortlisting the roles, researching whether your resume fits that, building the resume, updating your social profiles, tracking job boards, writing the cover letters, personal, like networking at scale, like making the actual applications. Then once you get some person to, like, ask you or interested in your profile, you would then do the interview prep for that particular role. There's also offer negotiation. There's also, like, negotiating your exit from that other organization if you're already in a particular place. So there's lots of different tools that can help you along the way, along that entire like phase of or rather the entire down the entire pipeline of recruitment. And one of the ways you can, like like I was talking about earlier, was like we were talking about building it. But in your process, what I would even suggest is, like, when you are giving it particular things, also ask it to analyze it. Hey, as like a recruiter or as like a expert product manager, analyze and give me feedback about what I could have done better, right? As like a product management recruiter, help me understand what I could have done better, how I could have expositioned better in trying to make sure that my target audience understood what I was trying to explain, and how, to what degree did that change. So it might then come up with like a much more nuanced insight, specifically based on the types of information, or rather the types of approaches you've chosen in trying to solve a particular case study. So again, I'm going back to like prompt techniques and using these ChatGPT like tools, but it's so the reason why I keep saying ChatGPT in my mind is because it's one tool which is at like the forefront in terms of like the language models emergent capabilities of a language model. It's at the forefront, and it helps you do a lot of these things where you would have to use multiple different technologies to be able to do something similar. Or again, they are probably using GPT-4, GPT 3.5 in the back to kind of build those technologies. So it is ideal to then get an idea of okay, if I can use one technology or one tool to do like everything, which might that tool be? Which is why I am suggesting ChatGPT. Especially the paid version lets you have access to some like the advanced data analytics. It lets you have access to these plugins, which then automate your job search, as well as like your resume building, application tracking. Multiple things can be unlocked. Again, so some of those plugins might also be channels for their own paid products, so beware. But yeah, just thought I would drop my 2 cents on why I am harping about ChatGPT. Is because tends to be an all-rounder, and if you give it enough instructions, it can give the sort of, at least like it gets you closer to your goal, right? Like it won't get you 100%, AI is not there to get you 100%. It will get you to 60 to 80%. But like from 0 to 60 in like no time is much better than getting to 0 to 60, in like a couple of weeks, right? Like you're able to get more things done in a day just because you have that bandwidth, essentially taken offline, and you are able to offload it to these agents.
Yeah, and for those of you that are at home that are writing some of these names down, we will put them in the YouTube description after kind of the upload hits there, so you can link off some of these companies. But I think that one of the things as a job hunter, you're going through, the fallout of losing a role that you may have enjoyed. You're hearing a lot of terms right now. I think the best way of approaching this is try to tackle one or two of these things a week and testing them out, seeing if it works for your workflow. I know like Simplify, which is similar to TL for autofilling. I'm using that. I really like that. I tried that 1 week. I'm using ChatGPT right now for a few things. And like, yeah, I haven't fully pushed the boundaries on all of these things, gone into ChatGPT plugins. But the other thing is some of these are like foundational AI pieces, and ChatGPT is one of those. And I don't think if I knew what I know now after having time to play with it, I would have waited to lose my role to really get into it. So for those of you that are still working, start using these things like the foundational layers like ChatGPT in your job and figure out how you can get better at your job today with ChatGPT. So then when you do need to use it to help you with job hunting, it's just like another tool in your toolkit. Like learning these tools, some of them will not help you in your job, like Simplify autofilling applications. You'll probably never need that. But if you need to learn something, and ChatGPT 3.5 is like pretty good for a lot of these things. And my advice to everyone is like, if there's a free version, always try the free version first for a while, and then once you find value in it, then you can go up to like the paid version if you really are maximizing this tool. So yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Salil.
I could not agree more. That is like, I would highly suggest people to use the free version as much as they can. And again, like you said, like you can start using it not just in your personal life, but like let's say you're working. So like for me, as a product manager, you like how many discovery interviews you have to do, and to remember like insights from, again, you can take notes, but like a human being, even though they're trying to listen or they're trained to listen, with product managers, or as product managers you are, you still don't remember everything. You're not able to articulate everything or summarize all the insights from a particular conversation. And now AI with like voice to text, essentially, you can get you can use like things like Whisper, which essentially transcribe your audio recordings, then use use that text using LLMs to then find insights, which again is like a lot of work. Like to go through an hour's interview and to find those insights again by rewatching it is just like next to impossible. But there are these ways. So ideally, if you're able to learn these foundational language models and find ways to apply it in whichever domain of your life, what you're learning is a very foundational technology which can then unlock other potentials in other ways that you might not have imagined right now. But you're getting, you're getting a grip, or like you're learning how to balance yourself in that domain. So trying to get on that bike, trying to find where, again, start with the free version, exactly like Ryan suggested, because you have to hit the ceiling, and like the ceiling's really high. Plus again, I think by the end of this year they're going to be releasing GPT-4 for the public, and there's going to be like another version for paid users. So ideally we are going to have like even better language models in no time. So the ceiling is always going to go up for what the free version is able to do. So get on it, try like messing around with how you can find a way to automate some parts of your life, or learn these foundational technologies such that you are then able to leverage it not just in your work life but in your personal and other domains of your life as well.
Yeah, I mean, not that it is pure AI, but things like calendars, like I think anyone that has shifted to Calendly or Google's appointment scheduler or anything like that instantly notices the decrease in time they spend scheduling meetings. And like at first when I started using Slackbot, I was like, what's the point? Like I could go into my calendar and schedule a reminder, and then I never do that anymore in like day-to-day 9 to 5. I'm like, Slackbot, tell me when, like blah blah blah. And as a product manager, part of your role is poking people to bring, deliverables back to you and getting updates and that kind of stuff. And like, the old school way of putting it in your calendar and whatnot just like was so slow. But like, boom, Slackbot, tell me to do this. So there's all kinds of like little ways that once you just start playing, you'll start saying, oh, I could do this over here, and it's like in a totally different application outside ChatGPT. But every single software nowadays is rolling out some piece of AI, and Slackbot is like kind of like one of those pieces. And calendars, that's an easy one because it's literally just checking availability. But like you're still gonna start, and like even things like Figma and Canva, like they're starting to get there. They'll bring in some of that mid-journey prompt engineering pieces that we're seeing already, and it's gonna like revolutionize, I think, the way we work long term. So the more we can poke about while we're job hunting, the better.
100%. So right now, what you have, like what you're touching upon is the rise of generative AI. Obviously, we are in a generative AI spring, so there's a lot of things happening. But specifically, what we are talking about is this domain of knowledge is unlocking new technologies by giving these co-pilots. All these companies are trying to develop these co-pilots with which you can unlock certain productivity or creativity gains. But it's not just that these are going to live in silos. Eventually, these models or these chatbots or these agents will be able to connect to each other. And like if I have like a Slack bot, I can ask my Slack bot, hey, like check my Google Calendar. It's already connected right now. It can. But what I'm saying is now it can also talk to, like let's say Pi is another up and coming large language model, foundational model. So what they're trying to build is like a personal assistant. So now let's say you have this personal assistant, or not, let's say not Pi, but like something like Pi, because again, these companies are going to go through a lot of consolidation eventually as they mature, and we will find one of these agents becoming like the thing who's a personal assistant. Once you have that personal assistant will be able to connect to the Slack bot, that will be able to connect to Google Calendar, will be able to connect to your Zoom, will be able to do like so many more things, because that agent can speak to other AI agents for other companies and unlock automations that were not possible before. So again, right now we're in that phase where we are just unlocking like the base. Like we haven't like hit the ceiling essentially of these technologies. It's like even with large language models, right? Like large language models, like I started playing with GPT-2, GPT-3 like a while ago, and we didn't really find like a very much we didn't find it to be so brilliant as there weren't as many emergent properties. And when like people in the field realized that they had emergent properties was just through prompt engineering. Basically, one of the like researchers had come up with like think step by step. That was it. One line, think step by step. That unlocked like a whole new set of like applications that came in from. We found that these language models were smarter than we perceived them to be, because nobody had prompted them in a way that helped them be more logical. So essentially, we got that out of these prompt engineering techniques, and now we are in a place where we're still just exploring. Okay, what are all of these emergent properties? And while we are exploring what these emergent properties are, we are also like building guardrails. Why? So essentially, like they're building the car as they're building the safety features for it. So we don't know how this field will evolve and all of the tools that will come out of it. So like you've correctly assessed, start playing around with it today, so you are a part of it like since the inception, and then you are able to see how it can unlock not just productivity for you but for those within your purview.
Yeah, and I think that like the parallels that I draw on, it's like when I learned Excel like, I don't know, decades ago. It was very easy to jump onto Google Sheets. And then it was very easy for me to jump into Google Data Studio and link back like through my data from Excel and like all of these like, it's all like incremental steps. And I think that that's where I think there's a lot of similarities with where we're at today. It's like we're building Excel, and like whether Excel wins or loses, it doesn't really matter. You have to be ready to like jump onto Google Sheets or something like that. And it's the same thing when I learned like Tableau and Domo and all these other like data viz things. It's like I was always like getting myself to like 80% and then something else would come up and you get to 80% there. Like you don't need to get to 100% on this. You don't need to be an expert in ChatGPT 4. It's like you got to be proficient in Excel basically to kind of like get you ready for the next thing.
Yeah, I think like you identified, you got these mental models about how to think about tables and cells and rows, and how to then like wrangle data using this mental model in Excel, and then you could port it to like data analytics, data like visualization, however you choose. But what it gave you initially is that mental model of how to think about these things. So ideally, if people are able to engage with the current set of AI technologies, they will just pick up mental models in terms of how this thing works. What, like when I say this, like, it comes out with things like this. And sometimes if I say the same thing, it doesn't do that. So like there are very interesting conversations going on around this field right now in terms of like, so one of the people I follow in machine learning, he was talking about how like large language models hallucinate, but this hallucination is very close. Like if you look at like hallucinations in a human being, they would probably happen in the same part of the brain where creativity happens, because creativity is like, or innovation is something that is unique, that did not exist before, that has now come about. And hallucination is similar to that in that regard. So as these language, as we try to reduce the hallucinations, we also see that the capabilities, the emergent capabilities we were talking about of these language models, also somehow blunt as you put more guardrails, right? Like, oh, don't tell me about how, like, don't help people in making bombs, or don't, like, say things that will cause people like to do self-harm or something. So those are things, as we put guardrails, we don't know, because again, it's technically a black box that has so many trillions of parameters that we don't know how putting a guardrail here will affect the entire whole of that black box. But ideally, as you start learning about these things, some of the things that I'm talking about might sound like jargon, and that's okay. That's exactly where everybody starts. That's where I started in this field. And as you start learning more things like tokens, what is like a prompt, what are techniques for prompt engineering, you will then start picking out how this particular technology works and how you can leverage it to unlock certain things and find more efficiency and productivity within your workflows. And with that, I'll hand off to Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that like one of the things that people have mentioned to me is like, oh well, what if someone gets hired and they are really good at this stuff and they come across with an amazing case study and what, and then they get into the role and they kind of flop. And in my view, it's like they probably won't. They'll probably race ahead of the role, like, or just behind where they need to be by like continually, because the feedback loop on learning with an AI model, like paired with human, is like incredibly fast. Like I like reading audiobooks because I can't sit. I'm not someone that sits still. I like to like be moving around and getting the learning going through me. And you listen to that on 1.25, 1.5, you're getting a book pretty condensed down. You punch that same book title into ChatGPT and say, tell me what this is in 400 words. And then you plug that into Speechify or something like that. And you can get it in like 2 minutes. It's like, that's the multi-hour book condensed into 2 minutes. And now there's even companies building off that model of kind of like condensed books and far accelerated time windows. And so that same person that kind of like cheated through the interview process. And I personally don't, having used AI models enough lately, It's not cheating. It's like using the tools that you have at your disposal to get the job done faster. Like if someone had an access to a race car and they took their bike in a race, like that's their fault for losing. You know, like you had access to this great race car. So that's what I view is like if someone gets a job and they've been using AI models a lot and they, you know, human relationships are really, that's a hard skill. Like if you're doing an IC job and your job is to perform something really hard, like okay, you can probably catch up. It is really hard to build managerial capabilities and to manage humans and emotions. That is not easy. So I see, you know, someone that's young, this ability to rise up really fast as an IC. It does take an incredibly long amount of time to build an understanding of how to manage, work with people. Working with people is way harder than working with these AI models.
100,000% couldn't agree more. You can you cannot. There is no alternative for actual experience in working with and managing people, because that is the only way to learn how human dynamics works. And again, it's I mean, you can be instinctively good at a lot of things, and being like nice and cordial comes easily to some, but learning how to manage people in a workplace is a learned skill. It's not something that you're in, like, it's not an innate skill, it is a learned skill. So uh, the idea that these language model technologies or AI is in some form cheating is ludicrous. It's like saying, oh, you're using a computer, as versus like I'm writing a book using, like, pen and paper. It again, if I'm using, let's say, AI, and you're writing with your own self, it also still doesn't change anything, because the reader is the person who decides whether they like your work or they don't. How it is created is your choice. And some people look at a person who's using, let's say, something to, like for some, a way to do something fast might seem efficient. For others, they might look at that person and say he's lazy, right? So, or they are lazy. So I wouldn't say that uh, like the idea that if you're using AI or any other tools out there to accelerate your whatever processes that you're working on, that you're cheating. Even this idea in education, I think this idea comes from education, like where it is morally wrong to use like AI. But ideally, we should be including AI as, like, let's say, a Socratic teacher, or like other ways to use the AI technologies to help the students and learn how to build, like, get from zero to like 50, 100, like, wherever they need to be faster, using whatever is industry standard, rather than say like, oh no, you are students, you shouldn't be using these technologies. Again, I this is my personal opinion, obviously. But I think to look at these tools and then bury your head in sand and try and use like the older technologies doesn't pan out long term. So the faster you get on board, the faster you learn some of these technologies. And again, it's not, so first off, these technologies are very easy to use. And secondly, you don't have to be an expert to get started. So with both those things, all you need to do is identify the domains where you think you are not, doing well enough. And that is where I would start implementing AI. So for me, writing is a challenge. Getting past the empty page is like one of my, like, I will procrastinate for weeks if I could. But with ChatGPT, and again, there are reasons for that, right? Like, for like, if once I get started, you have to do like 2-3 days of research, then you come up with like like say 20-30% of something that you can get started on. As versus that, if you're using AI and you're like you're just putting down your thoughts in like in not a very cogent way, it will still be able to understand what you're trying to get, like uh, uh, articulate, and get you to at least like a 50-60% point, where you would have spent like a week trying to like get to 20-30%. You are now at 60% within like a few minutes. So again, it essentially
keeps you in that state of flow that you are in. So use it to keep yourself in that state of flow. Find the places where you have identified yourself to not be the best, and then leverage it in those domains.
Yeah, and kind of like as we kind of wrap up, I think one of the things that I've learned about AI is that it's very efficient at doing what you tell it to do. What I think where humans come in is like when you have a sprinkling of personal experience and you draw a line through those three things, and then you get the AI to execute around that thing, then it's like very effective. But like that's where a diversity of kind of like backgrounds come in handy, because you can connect the dots differently than your peers. And so I think that's that. And like when you see kids interacting with voice search and whatnot, this technology, like, the cat is out of the bag, or as I'm not sure if I quoted that expression right, but like this is just the way it is. It should be that you are rewarding people that connect the dots best and kind of bring together the right end product. And I think that the technology is going faster than laws, it's going faster than regulations and all kinds of things like that. And we just have to kind of make sure that we use it in a way that's legally compliant, but also, eventually we get the laws to adapt to things like, for conversational AIs will dramatically provide better customer experience. Does that mean that, like, they shouldn't be used? They should be used safely and various things. So I think hopefully this episode kind of brought together a good understanding of how it can be used in the job hunt, what conversational AI is, and then we'll put some links into the kind of YouTube video so that folks can kind of click off them along within the LinkedIn Live. And do we still have you there, Salil? Your feed kind of went dead there. All right, looks like we don't have Salil, and he's having some camera issues. But thanks to everyone for tuning in, and hopefully that gave you some great insights on your Monday ahead of your week of job hunting.